Okay, here's my take on Bryon Johnson's autoimmune disease diagnosis. You might or might not have heard about Bryon Johnson. If you're watching this video, you likely have. That's why you came to this. So he just got diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, and he is like the kind of longevity guru in the world. He's spent so much money on longevity protocols, health optimization, living longer protocols, injecting himself, taking 1,000 supplements. He's been documenting everything, which has been wonderful actually. However, he just recently got diagnosed with an autoimmune disease in the gut. And one of the big statements, and this is what I want to make this video about today, is that he said autoimmunity cannot currently be reversed, and he is setting out to prove the opposite. Now, I actually kindly agree to disagree in that respect. I've personally come to this whole functional medicine journey because I had an autoimmune disease in my gut, Crohn's disease to be precise, where your immune system attacks your own gut. Basically, how he calls it, eats itself. Same thing happened to me from an early childhood on. And I managed through functional medicine to put it in remission. And it's been in remission ever since, which I think was 2010. So this is 16 years as of the recording of this video. Knock on wood, been in remission. So it's not true that autoimmunity cannot be put in remission. And also, ever since becoming a qualified functional medicine practitioner, I have helped many other autoimmune patients to put their autoimmunity into remission. Now, I'm not saying that this is a simple thing. It, in fact, is a very controversial topic because regular medicine says this is not possible. I agree with what Bryon Johnson says there. Normal medicine says once you have an autoimmune disease, you have it forever. However, the whole point of functional medicine, and this is not just me, there are many, many other practitioners and colleagues out there that are practicing this and that have probably experienced the same as I have, where if you just get rid of what is making your immune system so angry, which is an autoimmunity, your immune system is overreacting to the point where it starts to attack your own cells. Depending on where it goes, that's what autoimmunity you have. So if it attacks your thyroid gland, it might be Hashimoto's or Graves' disease. If it attacks your gut, it might be Crohn's or ulcerative colitis. If it attacks certain parts of your brain, the myelin sheath, it's multiple sclerosis. There are all these, or your joints, rheumatoid arthritis. There are all these different parts of autoimmunity that can be really debilitating, life altering if they're not being managed properly. Now, regular medicine will give you immune suppressing drugs, which will often help reduce the symptoms and extend quality of life. However, they never really get to why the immune system started to act out in the first place. And that is where functional medicine comes in. It looks at the root cause. Why does the immune system attack it, become so angry that it starts to attack your own body? There's usually a reason. Now, it is true there are certain genetic predispositions. Certain people have certain genes that make them more prone to that. I have them, hence I had an autoimmune disease, and I am more prone to that. I have to be a little bit more careful with my lifestyle, certain choices, because I'm more likely and quicker to be triggering an autoimmune disease. However, it still always also depends on our lifestyle and what is putting pressure on these genes. Are we triggering the genes or are we supporting them? And that's where functional medicine plays such an important role. It can look at certain chronic infections that are making your immune system angry. It can look at hidden food intolerances, allergies that are making your immune system constantly angry every day. It can look at nutrient deficiencies that are making your immune system not able to calm down. And the important part is that it is never just one thing. So this is really, it's not that simplistic as in do this one thing and it'll put your autoimmune disease into remission. If it was that simple, obviously everyone would be doing it. It's usually having to look at the full picture, connecting all the dots of your health picture. And it's not always, even if you find out what your triggers are, it's not that simple to just reverse it. Again, otherwise everyone would do it. And a lot of autoimmune diseases can be extremely debilitating and even leading to death in some cases. So it's not that simple. Sometimes it can also be underlying factors like trauma from childhood that keeps triggering the fight or flight system, which takes away the immune system and makes it into a more reactive state rather than the calming, nourishing, healing parts of the immune system. So those can sometimes be very hard to deal. So I see this a lot in my clients, the ones with autoimmune disease. There are often components of trauma, severe trauma, small trauma, large T, small t, but there are traumas that are unresolved that are ruining how the body is dealing with certain triggers and how the immune system can deal with certain factors, because the body is potentially constantly in fight or flight and not so much in the vagus healing parasympathetic nervous state mode. So that's the harder part. But with functional medicine, we often always look at, or I personally in my practice, I look at what are the triggers that we can address, what are the, I call them quote unquote low-hanging fruits, because it is hard to address traumas. You obviously, if that is something that is at cost for you, you might want to work with a licensed therapist, help you work through certain traumas, reframe them, rewire them. There are certain different body works as well that can help with that. TRE has been shown to be quite beneficial, and lots of other wonderful techniques. Eye desensitization, where you look at certain parts of the, trigger certain parts of the brain by looking into different angles. There are lots of wonderful tools to rewire how your body responds to trauma, rewire that in your brain. But in addition to that, from a functional medicine perspective, we usually look at the biology. What are certain triggers that we can reverse and undo and support so that the immune system can calm down? And like I said before, often those are chronic infections, often those are gut microbiome issues, often they're hidden food intolerances that have developed because of a leaky gut, because of hidden food infections, parasites, candida. Often it can be mold exposure from water damaged buildings, viral infections, in addition to nutrient deficiencies such as not enough omega-3s or vitamin D or other factors that are very important to keep the immune system at bay. And what I found, and this is where I am not, and I'm sure Bryon Johnson, because he has all the money in the world and he's just put it out there, I'm sure he will get lots of people reaching out to him. But this is our profession in functional medicine, is looking at the root cause, no matter what it is, whether it is for an autoimmunity or for other chronic problems and conditions, and address them. And more often than not, once you just remove the root causes, address the triggers, the body can go into a state of healing and repair, recovery, and actually put those chronic illnesses into remission, including autoimmune disease. I've seen patients of mine where they had an autoimmune condition where all the hair was falling out, including the eyebrows and literally everywhere. And within just a few months of addressing the root causes, really digging deep, doing testing and addressing those, and he was diligent. He was actually really not that old, young, late teenage years, and he just went all in and did everything I told him to, and he managed to put his autoimmune disease into remission just within a few months. Similar to me, I was young, I was in my early 20s when I found out what my root causes were. And obviously the younger you are, the easier it is to rewire your biology. The longer it's been, the harder it gets, because the more sludge is built up in your body. But he basically started growing back hair within just a few months. And he'd been told before that that is a for lifetime thing. He will never be able to have any hair anywhere, and it would start to also deteriorate and slowly erode the rest of his body. And he's put it in remission. And I have had this many times. Hashimoto is a very common one where I see this quite frequently. I have a lot of female clients that come to me not even knowing they have Hashimoto's disease, but when we do some more deeper testing, we find out they have it. It's a blood test. And then they're like, oh, this is why I've been feeling so miserable for so long. But then instead of just stopping there, we then look for root cause triggers. And once we address them, once we find them, we need to be a real detective and look deep, do some specialized deep testing. What's making the immune system so angry? But once we start addressing them, supporting the system, it wants to heal. Most of them will get better. It might take some time to rewire, but generally it will get better. So if you've been watching Bryon Johnson and you're thinking, oh God, now he has an autoimmune disease and now he's trying to look for possibilities, just maybe if you know him, tell him functional medicine. There are wonderful functional medicine doctors and practitioners over in the States where he's based that are doing exactly that, what I am doing. I've been doing this with so many of my patients over the last decades, and it is so rewarding if you can really put something in remission that you thought would be affecting the rest of your life, the quality of your life. It was affecting my quality of life, my autoimmune disease. It was miserable. And I tried all these different things, but I really had to go and dig deep into the root cause, the proper scientific tests, not just a little bit of meditation and a little bit of eating more vegetables and a little bit of they all, I'm sure, helped a little bit, but they didn't put it in remission. You have to dig deeper, the proper functional medicine approach. And if you do, it's like a miracle. The body can start to heal. So the other thing I wanted to touch upon briefly is that obviously he's all into longevity and he's been doing all these protocols to try and extend his life. But now he's got this autoimmune disease. It's like, okay, well, what is the quality of life if you have an autoimmune disease? And also, an autoimmune disease generally reduces your lifespan. It generally degrades your body much quicker because there's chronic inflammation in this case now in the gut, and inflammation is one of the root cause triggers for lowering longevity, health span, and contributes to all sorts of health problems. So the way I practice my longevity healthcare is actually looking at root causes of what might degrading long-term health, not just giving certain supplements and peptides and injections to increase health span overall, lifespan, but actually look at what would cause a degradation, such as what are the chronic triggers for autoimmune disease, what are chronic triggers for inflammation, what are chronic triggers that are slowly eroding our overall health. Now, if you found this helpful, please comment below. If you have an autoimmune disease, please share this with someone to inspire them that it is possible to reverse if you are willing to put in the work and put in a detective hat and work with someone that's licensed and experienced in doing so.